December 31st, 2022. This is John Thuma, and this is Thuma on Data. What gives me the right to talk to you, data people, about data? Well, let's just go, from today, and let's go a little bit back. Today, I work for a hyperscaler, very large three-letter acronym company you've heard of that performs cloud services. I'm also certified in their database technologies, as well as their solution architecture technologies. I was a former employee of Snowflake. I'm certified in Snowflake as well. I've been certified in many different tools and many different products over the years. I bring about 30 years of hands on the keyboard experience with a variety of things, from extract, transform, load tools, ETL, ELT, whatever you want to call it, to business intelligence tools, to like MicroStrategy, Cognos, Tableau, data science tools, everything Python, notebooks, to SageMaker, to Aster data systems at Teradata. I worked for Teradata for about 5-6 years. Some of the best times of my life were at Teradata. Very fascinating place to work. The other thing, I worked for Microsoft for 5 years. I was part of the people that helped build some of the data backends for capturing data and analytics about feedback coming from the Windows desktops and things like that. So I've worked on very, very big projects, from, massive petabyte size scale products and projects, all the way to very small things, batch records, small, API-based records and things like that. I also bring about other technical capabilities as far as OLTP, or transaction processing capabilities as well. And my experience, just to give you an idea, just how long I've been in this business. SQL Server 4.x, when it was still actually a Sybase product. So many of you probably don't know that SQL Server, SQL Server from Microsoft, started off as I think they bought some bits or something. I don't know the exact story of how that transaction occurred, but basically they rebranded the Sybase database infrastructure, and it's what you now call SQL Server, and what you use today. But graduated all through the different versions of SQL Server, was eventually certified on the product, loved it. Love T-SQL, love PL/SQL and Oracle. I've worked on Oracle systems. I've worked on Netezza systems. I've worked on just about anything, just about everything, including Hadoop. And what we're gonna do is we're going to give you the raw. Let's talk about what we are. What we are is a raw, unvarnished opinion, and that of opinion of an expert or set of experts. I'll bring people in to come and chat with us, and we're going to make this interesting. But the good thing is it's going to be unvarnished. It's going to be the truth as I know it. And I'm sure some of it will be controversial. And if you do know me, I can go there. I'm not afraid to go there. We're not going to have any fancy music. We're not going to have any fancy production. We're not going to have any sponsors yet. If somebody comes and wants to write me a check, that's a different story. I don't think so, but we'll see what is going to happen there. But we don't have anyone telling us what we can or what we can't do. So what we are not, what we're not is a fancy, over the top, corporate run, podcast that has an agenda or has a direction from a marketing team or anything like that. I've worked with lots of marketing teams. I've been an evangelist. I've been, I've written, I've done all kinds of things, thought leadership and things like that. So what we're not is, we're not going to just sell ourselves out to, the big companies out there that want to, capture your business. Where are we located? We're located in my home office in Tampa, Florida. It's not a very beautiful day today. It is the new year, and I hope everybody has a safe and happy new year and welcoming in the 2023 year. And it's going to be fun. We're going to try to, run an episode every week, depending on my schedule and things like that. I'm also going to try to bring in some folks from outside to come and join me in this journey together. I've been wanting to do this for probably 5 or 6 years. I'm literally a hands on the keyboard nerd. I'm a programmer. I write code. I write Python today. I, can stand up, different environments from Spark to, I can make Snowflake basically sit up and do whatever I want it to do. It's a great product. We're gonna have we're gonna talk about all these different things. We're gonna talk about the Hadoop days and what went wrong there and why. And this is going to be a big one. Why did that happen? And how we can prevent that from happening again. Why am I doing this? Gosh, I love getting in front of people. And if you know me and if you've ever, been able to work with you in the past, you know that I just love to get up and talk. And I'm not afraid and I'm not shy and I'm just love to do it. So, let's get started and let's talk about the 30 years of my 30 years. And let's go back to 1992. Yeah, 1992, 1993. Windows 3.1. Windows 3.1 was the operating system that I started professionally in my career. I started my first company, I think it was about 25, 24 years old, somewhere in there, called Anomaly Incorporated. Why an anomaly? Because we're on time and on budget, and that's an anomaly. And I ran into this guy named Jay Dietzick, and he was the CEO of MCN Energy Company out in Detroit, Michigan. And he said, Thuma, I really need to know what's going on with my oil and gas wells. We're making all kinds of multi-million-dollar decisions. We need to know if these wells are bearing fruit, if we're going to get the return on investment and the working interest that we need on these wells. And I really need you to come and help me build an analytics group. And I can't rely on my IT guys. They can't get it done. I have nothing against IT people, but, so they hired us in and we started to build something. Based on SQL Server. I think it was 6.0 at the time. Yeah, it was 6.0 on Windows 3.1. And we started to write code in Visual Basic 3.0. We didn't have massive tools. We didn't have things like MicroStrategy today or Cognos or, you name it, where you have a thick client and a thin client, and you have a middle tier that houses your metadata and things like that and helps you, build business-friendly metadata and helps you with the relationships. We didn't have that. MicroStrategy at the time was just a thin client. It ran on, or thick client, excuse me, that ran on top of Windows 3.1. They didn't have their middle tier out. They didn't have what they call the intelligence server today. So we had to build it ourselves, and we literally did. We built it in Visual Basic and SQL Server. We pulled all their data together. And just to give you an idea, the server was a big monster. It was 4 feet tall. It was about 2 feet wide. I think the whole server cost us around $350,000. Now that's a lot of money for a server. Today's servers are anywhere between $5,000 and $25,000, maybe up, depending on what you need and the power you need in a server. But back then, they were expensive. And the other thing we had to do, just to give you an idea of how long I go back on this, is the memory. It was a compact server, which compact doesn't even exist today. The compact server required gold-plated memory. So the chips that they sent in, and it was like 256 megabyte chips of memory that cost $87,000 back then. And it had to be gold plated. Most of today's chips are tin plated, or, and you don't even see them because it's all in the cloud today. But back then, if you put a tin plated chip in that compact chassis, you're going to violate your warranty. So the memory was $87,000, and that ought to blow your mind because memory is very, very affordable today. But anyways, we went ahead and we built that middle tier, and then we built a visualization tier, thick client on top of that. And we had drag and drop capabilities back in 1992. We actually had a middle tier intelligence server. Like if you're familiar with MicroStrategy, we actually had that way before they did. It was before the time of startups and that, like they are today in the last 10, 20 years. It was before that. And this is 30 years ago. Or I would probably not be here. I'd be on my multicolored yacht talking, drinking fancy drinks and eating fancy cakes and pies, but I'm not. So we just kind of walked away from it. We didn't know what we had, but we had something pretty special where business users could drag and drop and build their own reports and literally, just build their own kind of ad hoc reporting solution, much like what you take for granted today. And we did it all in VB 3.0 of all things. And if you've ever heard of Visual Basic 3.0 or Visual Basic, C# or .NET, whatever you want to call it today, this was some of the first real production value, thick client development tools out there. So that gives you an indication how far back I go in data and analytics and what we were doing. We're very successful. From there, I went on and I went to different SIs or systems integrators and, actually learned how to build other solutions and things like that. So from like OLTP transaction processing systems and so forth. But I eventually moved into, multi-server database environments, and I moved into, Netezza was a big play. It was really starting to take off and everybody was amazed by that. It was a cost affordable option to Teradata. And I actually interviewed with Teradata back in college for an internship, and they turned me down. I couldn't believe it. They turned me down for the internship. I eventually did go to work for them. I was a data scientist for the Aster solution inside of Teradata, and that was fascinating. What most people, I think Aster was probably 10 years ahead of its time. What it was the ability to manifest data science algorithms via an SQL language. So we could do things like, support vector machines. We could do regression. We could do predictive. We could do, principal component analysis using an SQL dialect. And it was, select star from, whoops, sorry about that. It's New Year's, so we're going to have some fireworks going off. Forgive me. But, we were able to manifest, back to Aster, we were able to manifest against very, very large data sets. We're talking, terabytes and terabytes of data inside of these Aster systems. And it was, we had multi-node clusters that we could run these against. And using a SQL dialect, you could do a predictive analytic against hundreds of millions of rows of tables and run, build a model, train a model, and then test a model and use as much data as you wanted to without blowing it up. I mean, it was light years ahead of its time, and the dialect was really cool. It was a select star from Aster Analytic package, and the name of the package was really the replacement of the table name, and then you had predicates underneath that would allow you to put in the different options to tune the algorithms, and you could do supervised, unsupervised learning and things like that. Some of the most exciting times in my career were at Aster and Teradata, just the greatest people. I remember, going back, I remember my first day, I was terrified. I didn't know what the heck I was doing. I'd never really been in an SE type of role, like a sales engineer or support engineer type of role. And I'm totally out of my element, but if you know me, I love being out of my element. And, I'm sitting at the kickoff meeting, a sales kickoff meeting, and across from me is this guy named Brad Ello. And I didn't know him at the time, but he was the vice president of our region, which was the Eastern region. And I'm just going to let that bang and pop and fireworks stuff go by. But he cracks this joke. And I remember thinking to myself, man, and then the goofball went off and started talking about his barbecue truck or something like that. It was fun, and how he needed a data and analytics team, and he was going to keep his eye on me to make sure I was up to snuff. But anyways, it was a great time. We I was there almost 5 years, and they were just a fantastic company. I actually won an award out there my last year as the big data champion for the company. There was a number one guy out there. But it was fun. It was a lot of fun. We could do a principal component analysis against 400 columns of data or variables of data against, hundreds of millions of rows and get an answer back in about 2.5 minutes. I remember doing it for the first time, and the guy looked at me from the customer side. He looked at me and said, "There is no way you're going to get this done." He laughed at me. We can barely get it done on our notebooks, and we had to use a sampling of data. I'm like, yeah, I know. I'm going to get you to eigenvectors here in a couple of minutes. Trust me. And he goes, okay, sure. It's, go for it. So what we ended up doing is exactly that. We ran the principal select star from PCA, and we set the predicates on the table and the fields, the variables that we wanted to use. And voila, 2.5 minutes later, eigenvectors, and his jaw hit the floor. That was Aster. And it was a product, 5-10 years ahead of its time. And eventually we were able to sell a lot of it, and we were able to get a lot of it out to customers and things like that. A lot of text analytics and multi-genre analytic packages that were included with it. We were able to get that out there. And I think it's now part of the Teradata Vantage. There's parts of it like NPath and, collaborative filtering and things like that are now part of the Vantage product sets that are in Teradata today. But Teradata was awesome. It was a great company, great people. They invented they were the first big data company out there. And they could really smoke, man. They were fast. Just a lot of fun. I remember I was at DSW discount, I think it was Discount Warehouse Shoes or something like that. And doing a project, I brought in a bunch of data from their online, property, and I brought in data from their stores at the point of sale, and we combined it all together and ran these analytics. And I'm sitting there and I'm getting this done, and I noticed it right away. First, I told my boss, I go, "Hey, I'm going to be shopping for ladies' shoes. Don't if HR gives you a call, because I'm on the VPN and stuff like that. If HR gives you a call, please don't get all concerned. I'm doing a project for DSW Shoes." The reason I did that is because I wanted to see how their online experience worked. I wanted to see what the recommendation engine looked like. I wanted to see how pages formed together, and what the sidebar and top bar advertisements look like based on my search paths and things like that. Because what I wanted to do is show a difference in the data and how the data manifests and how their recommendation engines worked. I also went into their stores. So not only did we, if you're really going to get into data and analytics, you got to embrace the project. If you're going to do a retail type of data and analytics product, and they've got brick and mortar stores or they have an e-commerce website, you got to go up on their website. You got to get to know the patterns. You got to talk to their marketing people. You got to talk to their e-commerce teams, see what they're doing, what their limitations are, what they're trying to do. Because here's why. I'll tell you why. And then you got to go into their stores too. I'll get to that here in a second. You got to go in their stores. You got to see, what does the counters look like at the point of sale? What do the people look like? How many people are in the store? What do the banners look like when you're in the store? How does the advertisement in the store? Because that's all about attribution and things like that, which is really important about, not only e-commerce and also marketing, advertising systems, but it's also important for measuring the value of these things and understanding how things work in the real world versus in the electronic world. So when you combine them together, there's a lot you can learn. And what I did when I was working for DSW Shoes as a part of Teradata, found out that their recommendation engine on the online store was very wrong. And so the data on the store side and the brick and mortar side showed a lot of shoes that were sold, as well as side products like suede protection, leather protection, things like that, things to protect the shoe. And what I noticed is walking into the store, and this is why this is important. I don't care what project you're on, get to know the environment you're working in, get to know the infrastructure you're working in. What I saw was at the store, at the counter near the point of sale, were all these other little products that are kind of like a brick and mortar recommendation engine. It's an impulse buy, right? And the person behind the counter would go, "Hey, do you want some suede protection? I see you got some suede shoes. You want to protect this against the water and other kinds of damage that can occur." And so, yeah, they sold a lot of those. What I noticed was that the point of sale transactions in the stores had a lot of products that protected the shoe. I didn't see it. Here's the big thing. And this is why getting to know the company, getting to know their brick and mortar, getting to know their online experience is really important. What I noticed about their online experience is that their recommendation engines would recommend the identical shoe that they were buying that was in their checkout, in their shopping cart, but it would be a different color. And I'm thinking, there's something wrong there. And then I compared that to what's going on in the stores and in the physical stores, and saw that there was a lot of protective types of products that were in their shopping carts and in their checkout carts and whatnot, in their final point of sale transactions, I should say. So instantly I went and did a calculation of how much of the brick and mortar stores, how many of these products they were selling, what the ratios were, and stuff like that. And I made the equation and to say if they could translate this to their online experience and they could sell these products, this is how much money. I think it came to millions of dollars every quarter that they were losing out on. So I bundled this all up and I presented it back to the CIO and of DSW, and he was impressed. He goes, "John, that is an excellent, what you've discovered there." And he goes, "Excellent." He goes, I go, "So, what are you going to do?" And I turned it over to the salesperson because I was more on the technical side, not the sales side. And he looks, the CTO or CIO looks over at Colin, who is my sales guy over on the deal. And he goes, "Colin, John did a great job, but there is no way." And this is not John's fault. "There is no way I'm going to put another Teradata appliance next to the one that I have." And Colin goes, "Oh yeah, why is that?" He goes, "Because every 7 years you come in and you floor sweep me." So what the claim to fame for Teradata is, and it's a great company. I have nothing against the people. Again, nothing against the product. I have nothing against they invented this thing, but the customers loved them. Customers, if you were a user of Teradata and you wanted to do a table scan on a bunch of records, man, there was nothing that could beat it. Nothing could beat a Teradata relational database appliance. It was just a beast, But what he said was, he goes, "I am not going to put another, I get junk mail from Trump. Thank you. Anyway, I'm not going to put another Teradata appliance in my shop. You're already the most expensive piece of hardware in almost my entire infrastructure. I can't afford it." So that floor sweeping, what a floor sweep was, is every 7 years, the Teradata salesperson would come back and sell them basically another Teradata appliance. And that's just wrong. So that's my Teradata years and my data science years. And that's really started all of this. And I hooked up with my product unit manager over at Teradata, and he came at me in sales kickoff meeting in my last year. Said, "Thuma," he goes, "I got an idea." I go, "What's that, Randy?" He goes, "I want you to be the lead evangelist for Aster." And I'm like, "What the heck is that? I'm technical." He goes, "Yeah, you need to come out. We need help here. You can talk to anybody. You can talk to people at every level, from the C-level executive all the way to the directors, all the way down to the folks who do the work. He goes, "We need you to do videos. We need you to build a community. We need you to go out and talk publicly about this stuff." And off I was. And I didn't know at the time. I had always been kind of a hands on the keyboard kind of nerd, who had great arts and crafts skills and could talk, but I didn't know that I could write. I didn't know that I could do all these great things and speak at very large events. And, it really changed my career. And I have a lot of respect for Randy and his ideas there on how we could change things. And it was a big deal for me, but, and that's why I'm doing this today. The other thing is I went to work for a very large financial services company. I got a couple of patents. I have 2 patents on cloud services that I wrote for FIS, and then I have 2 pending. One on a data algorithm that I used using the Pythagorean theorem, and then another one on data traceability and things like that. And we'll go through those a little bit later. Very fascinating things. From there, from Teradata, I hooked up with some friends over at Silicon Valley. I went to work for a couple of Silicon Valley startups. The big one that I really loved the most was my days at Arcadia Data, and working with the team out there from Shant, who's now at Databricks, and eventually what happened was and Sushil Thomas, and just so many people out there that I just absolutely loved. They eventually got bought out by Cloudera. So what Arcadia Data was a business intelligence, an advanced BI tool, an advanced business intelligence tool that was set on top of Hadoop. And they had this trick. What they could do is intercept all the SQL coming through and going against the back end on Hadoop. And they could build what they call smart acceleration objects. They were basically just materialized views that would manifest high-speed tables and views in the form of materialized views that would make your analytics a lot faster. And it was amazing. They had their own little visual BI tool on top of it. You could also plug Tableau on top of it to capture those SQL tools, and it literally was, again, an excellent product. It was ahead of its time. It's just Hadoop was done. And I was there, when they were we still had MapR, we still had Hortonworks, we still had Cloudera. And we're going to have an episode just completely dedicated to Hadoop. And, really what it's about was just the mystique and the marketing power of how marketers really change an ecosystem. Hadoop was supposed to be the end all be all answer to data warehousing and all the Teradatas of the world, the Netezas of the world, the Greenplums of the world. It was going to change everything. It was going to be the end of SQL. It was going to be the end of ETL. It made all these wild promises that never came true. And really what it was a trend. And we'll go through that. We're going to talk about those things. From there, I went on to Snowflake Corporation. And man, what a mind blow. If you have not seen or played with Snowflake, and you know a lot about databases, you gotta check it out. It is probably the most innovative thing I've ever looked at or worked on. I loved it. It was a lot of fun, and it was tightly bound with the hyperscalers, right? The AWSs of the world. And you could do a lot of things. You could, build a lot of external capabilities that would allow you to call out to APIs. You could do a lot of different things with it very rapidly. Standing up the environment was simple. The ability to build virtual warehouses is it's a mind blow. A virtual warehouse is basically the manifestation of compute that runs queries, and you can set up as many of them as you want, and they come online instantly, near instantly anyway. And, it's just an amazing product and how it works. So we'll talk about Snowflake. We'll talk about Databricks. And, I'm not a big fan of Databricks. I think Spark is great. We'll talk about Databricks, and we'll talk about why that's important. I think it is important. I think there is a place for it in the ecosystem for data people, but I think that it is very complicated. It is very expensive. I'm not talking about the compute layers. When you talk about expense and you talk about cost, you got to look at the whole picture. You got to look at the people, the process, and the technology. How many people do I have that know Spark? Not a lot. How many people do I have that knows SQL? A lot. So that's some of the things that make, Databricks and Spark very expensive solutions. And it's because you can't care and feed for them. You need double the people, and they're hard to find. The harder something is to find, the more expensive it is. So it's really the people required to make the products work that matter when it comes to Databricks, and support that for that no end. I actually had somebody from a customer of mine say, John, we love Databricks. We think it's great. And it is. It is great. It's fantastic. Not anti-Databricks. But in the enterprise, and I'm talking about companies that have, 5,000 employees, 10,000 employees, maybe they're publicly traded or bigger. It is very hard to find, hire, and retain those people. And it's also, when you do build something, people tend to leave. They tend to build their resumes and they leave. They move on. They go somewhere else. And they leave these companies with a lot of technology debt that they can't undo. And so what the gentleman said, and I remember what he said, it was pretty interesting. He goes, John, we got the project done. We got it done pretty fast. But our main people, they all, they got their resumes ready and they left. They wanted to build. They didn't want to support. And it makes sense. He goes, but we painted it with Databricks. We painted ourselves into a corner, and the paint was never going to dry. So it means they had to stay in that corner. So there's a lot with Databricks. It was very interesting. Worked on it. It's great. I'm not against any of these products. I'm going to tell you the truth as I know it. It's expensive. It's hard to use. All that good stuff. Snowflake, very, very interesting. They just amazing product. Very flexible, very easy to use. If you know ANSI SQL, ANSI SQL, you're going to be right at home. So that means all your experience with Oracle, SQL Server, Netezza, anything that you can run SQL analytics against, you're going to be right at home with Snowflake. And that's why I liked it. And so we competed against Databricks all the time, and it was very, very respectable competition. But we're going to talk about Snowflake too, and some of the pros and cons, and Snowflake gets a bad rap of being expensive, and I don't think that's the case. I mean, we'll talk about strategies and how you can manifest in cost reduction and things like that when it comes to that environment. And there's just a lot we can do. Now I'm over at a hyperscaler. Love it. It's fascinating. The completeness of vision. What I love about the hyperscalers is the ability to manifest infrastructure as code, right? The ability to build out an infrastructure or completely fail at a project and not have a huge expense up front. That's what I love about these guys and these big hyperscalers. And just got certified. I'm AWS database specialization certified. Just got that certification a couple of days ago. And I'm also Solution Architect Associate certified as well. And Snowflake certified too. So I think I said that in the beginning, but it's very fascinating. Happy New Year, everybody. It's very fascinating. I don't know if you can hear the fireworks in the background, but the very fascinating companies and how they work. And, if you've not played with AWS, it has all kinds of neat things. You have Neptune for graph, you have DynamoDB for, document type processing and flexible infrastructures and serverless infrastructures. You got Athena, you have Glue, you have, you just have a lot of different services available. And of course, RDS, which gives you MariaDB, SQL Server, Oracle, Postgres, MySQL, as well as others. And then Aurora database, which is just fascinating. And the ability to really build out high performing solutions and read replicas and all kinds of different things that you can bifurcate your writes from your reads. And you can also spread data across multiple availability zones. You can do all kinds of things to make your systems resilient. And then the serverless aspect too. So we'll talk about, not only Aurora serverless, but we'll talk about Athena, we'll talk about Glue, we'll talk about, QuickSight, we'll talk about all kinds of different things. And it's just a fascinating world. And, I had no idea it was this advanced and this much fun. But this ought to give you an idea. We in conclusion here, we went back 30 years. SQL Server 4.x. We went back to, even I didn't talk about it, but I've worked on Oracle 7, 8 infrastructures, 9 infrastructures. We went back 30 years in this podcast. And this should give me the credibility to talk to you. And I sure as heck hope you'll come back for next week's episode, and I'll figure out what we're going to talk about. You'll probably talk about Hadoop. Let's just go ahead. We'll make next week's episode will be about Hadoop and, what the big deal is there. And we're going to talk about trend. We're going to talk about platform versus trend and why you should never make a trendy decision ever again. Hadoop was a trend. It was, and I'm just going to be very honest with you. Hadoop is a big pile of garbage, right? It's great for a startup company with lots of really intelligent people that really know what they're doing. But here's the thing. I never saw 2 Hadoop environments, even from the same vendor, MapR, Cloudera, Hortonworks. Now, all but one of those companies is gone. I never saw 2 of them that were identical. And I worked on with a very intelligent partner of Cloudera's that built tools on top of Hadoop. But that's what we're going to talk about next time. 30 years in the business. Patents. I have 2 patents, 2 pending. I'm multi-product certified. I'm Snowflake certified. I'm AWS certified for databases. I've worked for Teradata. I've worked with, I turned down Netezza actually. I was going in for my finals day just to, tell you this little story, this anecdote. I was going in for my final interview at Netezza. I was really excited about it. And the recruiter called me up and said, and I was literally about 15 minutes from the airport. He goes, John, IBM just announced they're purchasing Netezza. And I'm like, oh, he goes, do you still want to go to Boston? I'm like, I don't know. I think I'm going to call and cancel. I literally got off the exit ramp, the next exit, and turned around and went back home and totally bummed out. But Netezza, great stuff. At the time, really great Postgres enabled service that allow you to massively move a ton of data into an appliance, multi-master type of environment. But we're going to talk about all these things, and we'll bring people in. Like I said, we'll bring people in, some experts along with me to make this more interesting, so you can hear more than my voice. And if you do have something you need to you talk about, make sure to drop me a note in the. I think we're going to launch this thing on YouTube, but make sure to drop that into YouTube and in the notes, and I'll keep an eye on it. But we'll make this more formal. Like I said, no fancy production, no fancy music, no advertisers, none of that. We're going to try and stay loyal to the honest truth here, and just go for listens and views on YouTube. So with that said, again, Happy New Year, everyone. I hope your 2023 is prosperous and healthy and happy, and you and your family and loved ones have a great, safe, and happy rest of the celebration tonight. Thank you very much for listening. John Thuma, Season 1, Episode 1, The Big Introduction. Have a good night, everybody.